In the last video, we talked about categorizing different kinds of variables, and I wanted to give a lot of examples and spend a lot of times on the specifics and seeing like talking about why everything is the way that it is. But in general, that is going to be a longer video that we're going to have. So uh, thanks for sticking with it. And let's talk about analyzing data. So we've got a nice table with more definitions. I know. Don't worry, we'll be using these for the next however many weeks. So they'll get in your brain eventually. And then if you ever forget, you have a good place to go back and look. Have your Unit 1 notes for reference in the future because we'll be referencing these topics. You don't necessarily have to have them super memorized, but it's good to have them for reference so that we can talk about them. This one specifically is huge, okay? Because depending on whether we're looking at a categorical data or numerical data, the quantity of interest is going to be different. When we look at numerical data, a lot of times what we really care about is the mean. When we look at categorical data, a lot of times what we really care about is a proportion, right? So this could be like, what proportion of residents support measure X? Okay. Do you support measure X? Do you not support measure X? That's categorical data. We care about what proportion will do that. Okay, for numerical data, a lot of times means are useful. Okay, like the average height. Height was numerical, so we're looking at the mean, and mean just means average. By the way, okay, mean and average mean the same thing. And so if we know we're doing categorical data, then we know we're probably talking about proportions. And there's two ways that we can write proportions, okay? Sometimes we'll write proportions with a P. Sometimes we'll write it with a P hat. Again, this is pronounced P hat. And it just depends. Are we talking about the whole population proportion? Then it'll be a P. Or are we only talking about the proportion from a sample? That'll be P hat. And in general, if we're looking at the whole population, we call it a parameter. But if we're only looking at a sample, we call it a statistic. So big table with so much information in it, but don't worry, we got two examples at the bottom of the page. For numerical data, a lot of times we care about means. And if we're looking at the whole population, we'll use mu. So it's pronounced Mew, like the Pokemon. It's not spelled that way. It actually is spelled MU, but that's how it's pronounced. Okay. And over here is X bar. That's what we use for sample means. So pause, take a breath. It's okay. Lots of definitions. If you're ever unsure of whether something is going to be a proportion or a mean, look at the kinds of responses that you're going to get. If it says, if it's saying like, we're curious about the percentage of people who support measure X, think of the question that you're asking those people. The question you're asking those people is, do you support measure X? Yes or no? That's the answer, yes or no. Oh, that's categorical data. We're going to care about proportions, P and P hat here. Or if you're asking average height, think about what question we're asking people. We're asking people, what is your height? What answer are they going to give? A number. Okay. So if you're unsure about what to do here, look at the responses and the questions, and then you can go from here. All right, so let's do some examples of this. And we say researchers are interested in the percentage. So careful, because at the start you think percentage might mean numerical, because percentage is a number. But let's pause there. Let's not pause there. Let's keep going. We're interested in the percentage of people in a city that support a new recycling law. We're going to draw a picture, and we're going to figure out what is the parameter and what is the statistic. What do those words mean? Oh, parameter was for the whole population. Statistic was for the sample. Oh, okay, good. So just like before, in the very first video, we can draw a big picture. All right, this is the whole population. All right. This is, oh, wait, what is the population? We're interested in the percentage of people in a city. Oh, so this is going to be all people. In the city. And be very careful here. The population is not just the people in the city that support the law. Supporting the law is a specific response. But remember that population is all the people, not just the people who agree with us. Okay? So just like before, it's all the people in that city, not just the ones that support the recycling law. Okay? Now within that city, right, there's a population proportion. The parameter is P, the proportion who support the law. Okay? But again, so in that whole city, you know, maybe we have, you know, this amount. Don't write this down. This is going to make your notes look messy. Maybe we have this proportion support the law, and these people don't support the law, so the proportion P is going to be like 1/3 or 1/4 or something like that. Okay? But it's going to be hard to include all of that in this graph. So that's going to be the population, and that's what parameter we're looking at. Because this is categorical data. Do you support this law? Do you not support this law? That's categorical. Okay? Support a new recycling law. Categorical data. Now, we can't get this P. We can't get this parameter. We can't ask everybody in the city. That's too much. All we can do is ask a small subset. Okay, the sample. All right, the sample, the people we ask. That's just a small subgroup. Okay? And in this sample, what we really can find is P hat. That's our sample proportion. The proportion, there's not room to write this. The proportion of those we ask to support this law. Okay? So P is a proportion of everyone. We can't get that. But we can find P hat. That's our statistic. P hat is our statistic. Now, in a perfect world, I've never drawn this before, but I'm going to try, and it might look ugly. In a perfect world, our sample, you may or may not want to write this down. In a perfect world, our sample proportion, right, if we think of, okay, this many people, right, support it, and this many people don't support it. So P hat is going to be green over what proportion of the area is green. Now, ideally, when we take a sample, maybe our sample is just this box, this small area here. But notice that the proportion of our sample that's green is the same as the proportion, right? The proportion in the red box that's green is the same proportion as the proportion in the blue box. That's good. That's good sampling. Okay, and that's something that we're going to talk about later. Unfortunately, sometimes we sample like this. That's not good sampling. That's going to be biased sampling. We'll talk about that as well. And then sometimes we do this. That's called gerrymandering. Okay, so that's not really, but it made me think about it. Not really, gerrymandering is not really related. Or I mean, it kind of is actually. Well, let's not talk about gerrymandering in this video. But yeah, so that's what we've got here. So ideally, the sample will have a similar proportion. Ideally, P hat will be similar to P. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. but it's good information. Let's do another example. I'd recommend pausing the video and try to do this next example on your own and see if we get the same thing. So pause the video now. Great. So we're going to do the same thing. What are we looking at? We're looking at an average. Right? Over here, we looked at a percentage. That's a proportion. Over here, we're looking at the average. That's a mean. You can also look at days of shelf life. That's going to be discrete. It's going to be discrete numerical. That tells you that we're looking at means. Two ways of finding that we're looking at means. The population is going to be over here. Population is going to be all the apples that we're looking at. Population is not all the apples that we're looking at, sorry. All the apples at Olympia's Trader Joe's. Okay. And the average, right? The real average shelf life is going to be mu. We don't know this. What we're going to do is we're going to take a sample. And this is our parameter. We know that because we're looking at numerical data, so it's a mean. The parameter for the population is mu. But what we're going to look at is some small subset. Okay? Sample is the apples we look at. We can't look at all apples at Trader Joe's, probably. We're just going to pick a few. Hopefully take a good sample, a representative sample. We talk about that at the end of this unit. Okay? And then we can find their average shelf life. Shelf life X bar. That's going to be our statistic. That's what it looks like for numerical data. Okay? That's basically what we got in this video. Let me know if you have any questions. Good luck.